Hi, this is Jim Ziegler, the Alpha Dog, and this is the Dawg Pound. uh, April, I need some music.
I'm on it. I'm on it. No
Okay,
exclusive.
absolutely. Today, the Alpha Dog's mischievous Dawg Pound posse. We're at half strength. Several of our members are on airplanes right now, but one of the most talented women in the car business. One of the directors of the Horn Auto Group, my friend April Simmons. Hello, April.
Hey, everyone. Great to be here. Hope everyone had a happy 4th of July and ready to get started today.
I am so ready. And you talk about celebrity guests. You're not going to believe this. From the Banks Report, Cliff Banks, old friend of mine. Hey, Cliff, how you doing?
Afternoon, Jim. Good to see you.
Cliff is known to be the second best future forecaster in the business. And we're talking about brilliant women. Jennifer couldn't be with us today, but we did get Bobbie.
She's brilliant. I'll co-sign that.
Okay, the queen of BDC. I mean, absolutely one of the most brilliant women in the car. Well, actually, one of the most brilliant persons in the car business.
There we go.
I'm getting so politically correct.
I'm so proud of you.
Okay. I hate it. Okay. Okay, today, me and the mischievous Dawg Pound panel, we're going to be talking about last week's show. We had 3 State Dealer Association presidents on. Bob Glaser from North Carolina, Bob Okonewski from Massachusetts, and Don Hall from Virginia. Those guys, what they have in common is they're some of the most aggressive state association presidents of all 50. Some of the most aggressive. And they are on the dealer side. And I also, now, don't slap me about that. I actually had a call with Mike Stanton, the new president, CEO of NADA.
I'm glad
I did. I had a long conversation with Mike Stanton. And, you know, I have been super critical of NADA. I have trashed him every time I got on a microphone or a speech, every blog I wrote. I mean, I have been down on him ever since
Peter Welch. Got a few rounds on that.
Ever since Peter Welch stepped on the stage. I don't like Peter Welch, and he knows it. If he doesn't know it, I don't like you, Peter. Anyway, you know, so.
Tell us how you really feel.
But I really like this guy, Stanton, and I'm willing to, and I'm not going to talk about what we confidentially talked about. That wouldn't be fair. I don't repeat but the fact that we had a conversation, I'll just leave it at there, and it was very positive. And I believe that your new NADA is going to go to the battlefield and probably win a couple for a change. I'm really excited about it. Now, that being said, the manufacturers are going to try to sell directly to the public. Oh, the manufacturers are doing built to order. Cliff, you are on top of everything. You're on top of everything that's happened in the industry, Cliff. Tell me.
For as long as I can remember.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, Cliff held you as an
infant. You're calling me old, Bobbie?
I'm calling us like a fine wine.
Yeah, Cliff held Bobbie as an infant. Cliff, tell us what's going on in the industry as far as built to order, manufactured direct sales, and now the new FTC rulings that are coming out. What's happening?
Well, first on the manufacturing side, I listen. There's a lot of chatter, a lot of talk in the industry coming from the manufacturers, coming from experts like us. Watching the OEMs closely. Obviously, the chip shortage and the shortage of inventory has, and it's not just a chip shortage anymore, it's an overall supply shortage. But that's led to an environment in which dealers are able to, as we all know, I mean, for any of us who are paying attention, prices are at all-time highs for new cars. it really is almost a build to order scenario right now. Inventory is not on the lot, so
you're telling me they have to do built to order? It's a necessity.
Well, right now, yeah. I mean, the customer's being conditioned to waiting several months, if not longer, for their vehicles to show up.
Oh, there's people waiting for a Bronco for a year.
Yeah, longer. Yeah, I had a friend that waited. I mean, it was longer than a year, about 14 months.
Yeah.
But the question, again, I'll tell you, it's every presentation I've given in the last couple of years. I lead off with a slide with a shattered crystal ball. You talked about us being the futurists in the industry, Jim. But man, I mean, I think right now, with the way the world is, it's hard to predict how these things are going to play out over the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, Cliff, in several articles I've written about what I perceived as a dealer apocalypse, the battle of Armageddon. The battle of Armageddon.
Yes. Well, we certainly, the sides are lining up, and we're lining up for, certainly the OEMs. And we've talked about this before, even before the pandemic, Jim. I see the OEM strategy being less about owning or being the actual seller to the consumer, but keeping the dealership model, quote unquote, in place, but yet exerting much greater control over that model.
Now every time the manufacturer has tried to sell cars, they've failed miserably.
Yes,
I can take you in a march through history. We've done that.
Yeah.
And April, what are you experiencing with your built to orders?
Oh, that's been an epic failure for the most part. I mean, my manufacturers, the OEMs that are just pushing to get inventory to us and saying, hey, this is what customers want, send it to the dealer and let the dealer sell it, are being very successful. The ones that are saying, hey, we got to do this built to order model are really, really struggling because they can't get us the right inventory. They can't get it in a timely fashion. The worst part is that we can't even give customers an ETA. Build to order is fine if I can say, hey, we're going to take your order today. Here's how long it's going to take. And we can actually give good expectations, but we're not able to do that right now. So I think that there's got to be, if you're going to go that way, you better have a clear ETA and an expectation that can be followed up on and followed through with.
Are the customers accepting it?
No. Most of them are very, very upset about it, but it's kind of like everything else. I mean, we talk about automotive, cars are at an all-time high. Well, what isn't? I mean, have you tried to do a home improvement?
Oh, it's all Russia's fault.
Have you gone? I mean, anything at all that you go out there and try to buy right now is at an all-time high. I mean, go buy a gallon of milk. It's at an all-time high. I can't leave the grocery store under $400. Like, it's crazy. So everything is at an all-time high. Why we're going in now and saying, let's make drastic changes and ideals about what we need to do in the future based on a small period of time, I think is irresponsible. I think it's really irresponsible. So, that's how I really feel about it.
Bobbie, what are you experiencing with your clients?
I'm right there with April. I mean, I'm on the ground in these dealerships teaching BDCs and salespeople how to address this with customers. And the difficult part is the OEM isn't coming out and making these statements to the consumer. And instead, a consumer who's out either newly into their research or finalizing where they're at thinks it's the dealership that's doing it. And look, I wanted a Bronco when it first came out, the special edition one, the one there were only so many made of. I was down to get one. I don't have the patience to wait for that. So I didn't. I'm still driving the old car that I had before. And we're seeing that with consumers too. It's already hard enough to capture their intention and get them to engage and trust you to be the person that they choose to buy from. But then to add on top of it, that the big objection is, I don't want to wait for something, is a huge issue, because it's not even, it used to be that we could say, yeah, it'll take a while to come in, but you could do this other color or this other trim level. I'm teaching dealerships to wrap cars again for colors. I'm not even kidding.
Look at this. Keith Helton says, it becomes the dealership's fault. Ford said, order the car. Then they can't produce the car they told them to order. And who does the consumer blame? The dealer. Yeah. And now we got the FTC bearing down on dealers.
There's an added issue with Ford. these days because they can't execute a launch successfully if their life depended
Oh my
on it.
God,
It's a
talk
huge
about that,
job for
Cliff.
Ford Motor Company.
Ford,
their
Ford's had
warranty costs.
they've had a fuster cluck on everything they've tried to do.
Ford's warranty cost per vehicle is over $1,000, and the next closest OEM is right at 700. So and it's been an ongoing systemic problem at Ford, and now we're starting to see the problems that it's causing with their customers. So I think some of the problems that we're seeing play out, and a lot of the language, this whole direct-to-consumer model too is being driven by Ford at the moment, because Mr. Farley's comments, I think he's playing to both the investor world, and I think his messaging has been quite muddled over the last at least 6 months that we've seen.
Well, how do you see
a lot of confusion and concern with the dealer body?
What are you seeing there, Bobbie?
The biggest thing that I'm seeing is just a lack of communication across the board. And that lack of communication is causing confusion and frustration on both the dealership and on the consumer's part.
We're talking about internally at the manufacturer right now.
Yeah, but this is what's causing it, though, is that they don't know either. They don't know either. Exactly. And so just like in any business, when they don't know, it's easier to smoke show.
You talk to a manufacturer rep, and I've just spoken to a couple of them, not just Ford. General Motors is just as screwed up under Queen Mary. I'm telling you right now.
I was at Digital Dealer recently, and a Toyota rep, who shall not be named, says to me, I watch your guys' show and you're always talking shit about us. And, it's just like, come on. And he was kind of like a little bit of a jerk, right? And I was like, this would have been a good opportunity for you to approach me and have a real genuine conversation. And that is what is missing.
Last week, Joe Eberhardt at Land Rover, Jaguar Land Rovers, I did for Cliff. Is it?
He was, Joe Eberhardt was with Jaguar Land Rover. He was also back with Daimler back in the day.
Yeah, is he backing down on what he said last week? I heard that.
That he's backing down. I don't know. That may be.
He was talking about strict build-to-order model, completely eliminating the dealers. I mean, this came right out of Jaguar Land Rover. I mean,
well, I think they're going to the agency model in Europe also, which is no surprise. I mean, we've had all the stories recently with the manufacturers moving to the agency model, but we knew that was coming. They had already indicated that last year. So, I mean, what we're seeing is no real surprise right now. I for one, don't think it's going to be successful here in the U.S. I think there's just a lot of talk right now, and it's such a complicated transaction.
That's the problem, right? Is that it's often these decisions are made not based on what will be successful, but let's just try it. And I think the reps' hands are tied too, right? Nobody knows the answers to what's going on. Wouldn't it be so much more effective as a giant corporation to launch an actual PR campaign internally within the OEM and within the dealerships to get everybody on the same page of what's going on, so that there aren't what if conversations? What if conversations create conversations that are unhealthy and often miscommunicated and untrue? And
but Bobbie, you don't know what their strategy is. So how do you do that? Even at the OEM level, you have, it's an evolving strategy. So what they're thinking today may not be what they're thinking tomorrow.
But isn't every strategy evolving? Like some kind of clear directive other than what we're reading. I mean, we read op-eds to get this information. We hear from other people's mouths. It's like that kindergarten game where you'd whisper in somebody's ear and it would get all the way to the end and be something totally different. And so just some clarity and some conciseness for the dealer and the consumer would be huge.
It would be, but even worse, Bobbie, I'm not sure, and I won't say which OEM, but I actually had an OEM call my upper management last week and absolutely ripped our faces off for telling a customer correspondence that they sent to us. We got.
Wait a second. Wait. Repeat that slowly. Slow down. Slow down, woman. Slow down.
Get it, girl. Just do it.
Our production levels are at a snail level, right? And we get some correspondence from the OEM that says, hey, here's what's going on, why it's at a snail's level, the expectation of hopefully it'll get better again. Here's your carrot for the future. Hopefully it gets better, fingers crossed. And we shared some of that information with a consumer who is very upset about the lack of a vehicle being available to buy in the options and colors that they wanted. and we shared some of that information. The consumer reached out to the OEM, threw a fit, and the OEM called us very mad.
Because you said what they told you.
Shared the information that they told us. So, I mean, it's crazy to me. We want to talk about transparency on the dealers. Where's the transparency from the OEMs on the evolving strategy?
They've got no transparency.
They never want to share that stuff. And it's a shame, because what should be happening is there should be a true partnership between the dealer and the OEM. That's what it was designed to be. That's how it should work. But that's not how business often works.
And it has been on occasion. It has been.
It has been.
It has been. It hasn't always been hostile. I mean, there was a time when the presidents of Ford and the presidents of General Motors would call me to Detroit and Dearborn, and I would sit in their offices and talk to them about what the dealers did. And there were times you could communicate. And I'm just an outsider, but they communicated with their dealers. You know, so there was a time that Cliff and I could access any of the top people and get the true story and print it.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. I want to talk about another controversial thing that I'm seeing a lot of pop-ups going on, and quite frankly, what may be fueling some of this FTC stuff and some of the other hubbub that's out there where we want to attack the dealers. I want to defend the dealers in one spot that might be controversial, and you may all disagree with me, and that's fine, but market adjustment. You know, everyone's wanting to yell at the dealer on how dare you price gouge and market adjustments on all these things. And I want to talk about a couple of my dealers right now. Their inventory levels are so low that I have salesmen to feed, I have service managers to feed, I have desk managers to feed. I have a lot of employees who now have to make a living off of selling 2 to 3 cars a month versus 10 to 20. And the only way they can do that is to make more per car. That's the only way it happens. So part of this market adjustment is if you're willing to pay for it, which a lot of you are. We're not talking about gas and milk here. For the most part, if you need a vehicle, you can get a vehicle. If you want a vehicle, you might pay a market adjustment right now, but you're probably also getting 40% more for your trade-in. So I think there's a part where, yes, you're paying more for a new vehicle, but is it really necessarily a bad thing when you look at the net difference? And nobody wants to talk about those things. Everybody wants to just say bad dealer, bad dealer, bad dealer. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's always been that way. Supply and demand will always yield that the people willing to pay for it are the ones that are going to get it. And if you're talking about a want, then that's what it is. If you want a Porsche, you pay a lot of money for one. If you need a car, you go down to the pot lot and you get one. Sorry, that's just, I have to get that.
Look, I've seriously considered trading in or selling back my vehicle right now and just Ubering everywhere. I'm only home every other week, right? Waiting to purchase, but doing that. But the other thing that's coming along with that, though, is we've got the FTC stuff coming out right now for proposals on addendums on.
We're going to talk about that in a second. I don't want to get into that.
I want to get back to what April was saying. It's April. You must have been in the room 2 weeks ago. I was with a group of dealers internationally and talking to them about this very subject. It came up, and my argument was get the money while you can, and use the Porsche example exactly as you did. I mean, look, we have to make choices every day based on pricing, and I have to make that choice when I travel. Do I buy that first class ticket or do I buy the coach ticket? And yeah, it depends on the flight, depends on the price, and we all have our levels of decision making that we use to make those decisions. But I think I think there's a little bit deeper conversation. It goes beyond just the market adjustment. If that's on the website, it's being in its true.
Listen, Cliff.
But if you're coming in, pay one price, pay a certain price, and then you get socked with a different price. That's a different story, and that's I think
there's some of that going on. Yes, there is. But it's amazing. The manufacturer, like Stellantis, just reamed the dealers about marking up the cars over sticker, but then they raised the price on the 1500 Ram by $4,000. They took the markup the dealers were getting. They don't mind scooping it up themselves, but they don't want the dealers scooping it.
Correct. And they're also They're even going so far as producing the top line vehicles and not giving us the entry level vehicles.
Well, this isn't like new. Vehicles on constraint have always been insanely marked up. Think about all of the vehicles that have been $10,000, $20,000 over MSRP for years, and it wasn't a thing because it wasn't all through the market. But there is a difference between supply and demand and fair market pricing and price gouging, just like there's with gas, just like there's with milk, and just like there is with anything else. I'm concerned that the OEM is marking things up so that they're taking that gross instead of meeting the dealer in the middle. I mean, I live in Michigan where we have A plan, Z plan, X plan pricing. I live in an entirely automotive dominated market where there is employee and supplier prices, and they are being honored. And these stores are really struggling because they're having to step up the trade values to an extent that there is minimal gross happening inside of those deals, and they're getting real creative on how they're paying people as a result of it.
Keith Helton just said something really astute. We're charging $10,000 more for the new car, but they're getting $10,000 more for their trade, so it sort of evens out.
And that's what April was saying earlier. True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and Ford doesn't even mention their quality issues. They've had recalls on Lightning. They've had recalls on the Mach-E. I had a Ford executive tell me, don't buy a car that comes out of our Chicago plant.
I don't want to get too far into what Amy Shelton is saying here, but I do want to just address one thing. And it says, it is to your comment, it's to pay the employees. LOL, no, the dealer isn't passing that along. They still pay minis. Look, I don't know what dealers out there still paying minis on high gross, but if you're a top-notch high performance culture, salesperson, BDC person, or manager, and you're working in a store that's paying minis, call me. I'll get you relocated.
Yeah.
Those aren't the kind of clients that I work with.
Okay, I got another subject I want to bring up. Okay, the FTC has just put out some new regulations. They're coming. I mean, the administration has appointed a really pit bull. Cliff,
Yes.
You're on top of all that. Tell us what's happening with the FTC.
Well, Lena Khan, who is the chairman now, I think she's appointed by Biden. Maybe it was about a year ago now. And she's been somewhat handcuffed over the last few months. There was a Supreme Court ruling against her or against one of their practices last year. But and there was some political wrangling with one of the commissioners. They finally added that person, I think, in May. We're going to start seeing a lot more aggressive action. This list of proposed rules. It'll be interesting to see how quickly they get this through the process. I think the average length of time for getting a proposed rule through is 5 years. They're trying to get this in a year or so. Obviously, the timing, they want to beat the next administration if there is one. If Biden doesn't get elected again. But no, Lena Khan is a real pit bull. I think we're going to start seeing some aggressive actions against some of the.
Are they going after F&I? Are they going after?
They are going. They're going after F&I now. F&I products. Okay. Whereas before it was lending, now they're going after F&I. The thing in they did institute a judgment against a large group in Illinois in January.
Didn't they just zap Coons and Coons?
Well, that was the Maryland. I'm sorry, that was the Maryland Attorney General with Coons with some false advertising. But the FTC with Napleton, the Napleton Group.
The Napleton Group, absolutely.
Yeah, that was a $10 million. That was the biggest fine levy.
That's a pretty aggressive group. I don't know, but I doubt that.
But that was they went after them on disparate pricing on F&I products. And that was a change. That's something new.
Wait a second. Repeat that again. They got them on what?
This discriminatory pricing on with F&I products. So what we're seeing now is that the FTC is obviously signaling that they're going to come after dealers on the pricing of the F&I products. Which
I have always. Let me jump in there a second. That's my ballpark.
Yeah.
Okay. Service contracts. All but 2 or 3 states, service contracts are unregulated, fair market value. Whatever the bank will finance, whatever the consumer can be talked into paying.
Right.
For 30 years, I've been begging dealers to have a standardized pricing on service contracts. I've been begging every one of my F&I schools. I'm a record-setting F&I manager, but you don't need to do some of the practices that have spurred the Federal Trade Commission to come after us.
Right.
I have always said you need to either have a set percentage of markup or a set dollar amount of markup. You need to have a set. See, in Florida, it's an insurance product. Doesn't matter. In Florida, you can't discount a service contract or sell it for more. You must sell it because it's an insurance product and it's regulated by the insurance commissioner of the state. And I think maybe another state, maybe Wisconsin, one of those dairy states that really cares. But anyway, we're talking about the service contract in all the other states is totally unregulated. I saw a Texas dealer sell a service contract for $34,000. The biggest problem that was on an H1 Hummer, and GMAC at the time financed it. General Motors Financial at the time financed it. It was the biggest deal I'd ever seen and was the biggest chargeback I'd ever seen. But, because they did cancel it after a couple months. But all in all, you can't do deceptive trade practices. Now, deceptive trade practices, anything a regulator deems to be a deceptive trade practice. Generally defined if it's designed to confuse the customer or disorient the customer or divert the customer from the true figures. I was able to always set record-making numbers without ever non-disclosing. What do you think, Bobbie?
You don't have to non-disclose. That's the thing. If you're a finance manager, and I was a finance manager for a long time for Sonic Automotive, who was very strict about the exact amount of markup that was allowed on each car. You couldn't discriminate based on age, based on race, based on anything, even unintentionally because of the compliance issues that opened up. But selling an intangible product that you believe in is not a difficult thing to do. And it shouldn't be difficult to make good gross and be honest about it. It's like every time I hear a finance manager say, oh, my numbers dropped because I had a cash deal, I'm like, you're weak.
Absolutely. Continue on. Now, you were on a roll there for a second, Cliff.
Yeah, well, I think it'll be interesting to see over the next several months how NADA responds. Obviously, Mike Stanton has come out the new NADA president has come out really strong against the proposed rules. They're trying to angle for an extension of the 60-day comment period. So I'll say this: NADA, despite your dislike of Peter Welch, I will say this.
That's a personal thing. He might be a good guy to some people. I don't like
when it comes to lobbying and government regulations and government issues at the national level. NADA has been incredibly effective at protecting the dealer body. And in many ways, we don't hear about those victories because they really are in a position where they can publicize them. It becomes more of a spiking the ball or taunting your opponent when you cross the finish line, which is something they don't want to do. So you got to keep working with this.
That makes sense. So you're saying I might be unfair?
Yeah, I think, and I can tell you example after example during the Obama administration, the Trump administration, where NADA has actually protected the dealer body significantly from in things that have never been publicized or written about. So
I don't want to really get into an NADA debate.
No, right. But I'm saying, I guess my point to saying
the Federal Trade Commission. Let's get back.
I think my point to saying is I would be surprised if NADA isn't effective in blunting some of this over the next several months or next year or so. I think they have rational arguments, well-reasoned arguments that they can bring to the FTC. And I will see. I mean, Lena Khan is she's an unknown. I mean, that's the wild card is how strong and stubborn she'll be. So we'll see. But there's a lot of stuff under the radar, I think, going on.
Well,
that's fascinating to watch from a political side. Go
well,
on.
talking about this, I think Jim accidentally brought up a good point. You know,
Accidentally,
Florida, the warranties, right, are under the insurance sector, right? But that's state to state to state. We just had, a couple of dealerships get popped for advertising truth and advertising those kind of things. And so, here I have all of the, disclosures and disclaimers and all the different things to make sure that my group has got every T crossed, I dotted, that we're falling into all of those. So how is some of this stuff that goes in direct opposition to what states already have lined up and in there? And quite frankly, all of the stuff that was in this new FTC stuff is pretty much already covered in all of these other areas.
Yes, it is. The states have already covered a lot of it.
Well, and it's like, yeah, there are some of these things that are undeserved, and there are some of these things that don't make sense, and there are some of these things that the FTC should fight for the consumer on. And there's some of these things that are just our fault as an industry. And that's just the truth, whether anybody wants to hear it or not. Because you think about why is it so difficult to put a true transparent price online? Everybody says, well, then they'll shop me. They're already shopping you. That's why they're online. You really want to put 20 people in your showroom and argue about $750 in fees that are for nonsense, that are for nothing, when you could just hash it out online and talk to real consumers who actually want to buy from you. We forget the human capital that is involved in trying to get and lure a consumer in. Forget the advertising dollars that we're competing on. It's insane to me. And some of this stuff is nonsense. There should not be additional fees for some of these things. If you want to charge an additional fee for it, just make it the price of the car. The reason you don't make it the price of the car is because then it's not part of the gross, right? Then you're not paying the salesperson.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, there are chemical additives they're putting on the cars, the environmental protection package. We're talking about gap. We're talking about tire and wheel protection.
Right. Well,
we're talking about windshield. I saw somebody selling windshield replacement.
Look,
are you selling that? Are you selling that?
I love that product.
I love that product. Too often we can't sell it. I've looked into it because we would buy it here. We all need at least.
Yes, we have terrible potholes. I had 2 cracks in my windshield. Just cost me $500 to have my windshield fixed. But I'll tell you what,
I've got them all 3 of my vehicles right now, Bobbie, that I got to get fixed.
Right. Paint
here in Michigan.
Paint protection actually is one of my favorite products, and it makes a lot of sense in a lot of states. Like paint protection, interior protection for me is huge. The baby spills something in the car, it's covered. You know that smell you get in leather when you're by the water too much? You get in your car, it smells all musty. These are real things. Now, if somebody's selling it as like, oh, the color red is going to fade, which is true, but is it going to be worth this? Then that's a different situation. But the thing is, it's not a hard product to sell.
The environmental protection package is easy to sell because there are things like chemical fallout, there's bird droppings, there's acid rain, of course, there's tree sap, there's pollen, there's we live in the state of Michigan. We live in the state of Michigan where we put 2 tons of road salt per lane per road mile per year on our highways.
Right.
2 tons of road salt per
every lane of
highway every mile.
But that's the other thing, right? Is here's the thing. If you're in finance and you're offering every product every time with a menu 100% of the time, and you're actually selling the product and you're actually giving the consumer a choice to do it, then you shouldn't have to lie about products. There's a big difference between forcing a product on a customer, lying about if it's included, lying about if it's additional. Those are not compliant things. And not requiring finance managers and sales managers to understand compliance and the law is why these dealerships are in trouble. They made conscious choices. These were huge corporations that own a lot of dealerships. So if you own that many dealerships and the message isn't trickling down and you're not monitoring it, you need to inspect what you expect. And then we wouldn't have the FTC coming after us for stuff like this.
But
like tire and wheel protection. I had 7 Corvettes and 9 Escalades in 10 years. Mm-hmm. I always had a Corvette and an Escalade. Remember that, Cliff?
I do, yes.
I always had a Corvette and an Escalade at the same time. My wife was driving Mercedes. And when I got the Escalades, I would buy the big Toyo tires, and I would buy the ice metal wheels, $7,000 per. And I always bought tire and wheel. And we lived in a brand new neighborhood, still under construction. I was picking up nails and roofing knives. But then I found out my Corvette had ever run flat tires.
Yeah.
But you know what? They only run flat once.
Right.
There's nobody easier to sell a finance
$500 replacement
somebody in
tires.
automotive.
If you got a Corvette, you better have tire and wheel because the tire replacement is $500. And
Per tire. Yeah.
and you got to be able to sell the value. Because all I needed was a rap group and a posse. I had that Escalade all tricked out. It was nice. And but the wheels and what?
I like a good product.
I think I just, want to make a comment about all of these products because ultimately I think the states are already making sure that those pieces where the customer was unaware or they, were coerced into something, they're already protected. I still think it's the minority. I think most dealers now are presenting menu. They are going through the options. They are selling the value. And, I don't think there's really that many that aren't. And so for the FTC to come out and say, we're going to ban all products without benefit, well, who decides whether it has a benefit or not? Do we have to pitch the FTC now on all of our products before we're allowed to sell them? And then what about, the specifics about Gap really has me kind of spinning my loop because loan to value ratio at what point? At the point that they buy the vehicle? I mean, loan to value ratio, if you buy it today, is going to definitely change tomorrow. We all know that, right?
That has me concerned. You know what other one has me concerned is the ban bait and switch claims. One part of that, a couple part of that has me concerned too, because in the verbiage, one of them says, and don't hold me to the exact verbiage on this, but basically like advertising if a vehicle is actually there or not. And I think to myself, does the FTC understand how website inventory feeds pull? Because a car that was here this morning might not be here tonight. Are we going to go that deep with it? Or is it just, did we tell somebody that a car was there and then it wasn't? Is there miscommunication involved here versus is it truly to help the consumer?
I feel like there are no such things as coincidences. And I think the timing of this is just interesting and I'll leave it at that. But the other little snippet in here that says the agency is also considering cracking down on dealerships advertising related to the cost of the vehicle itself. So this is step
advertising.
one. This is just step one of where they're headed on trying to control this from all levels at the dealership level, and it just has me scratching my head with a big fat why.
I think it's the addendums. That's a huge thing right now because I'm in and out of these dealerships all the time, and I'm listening to people talk and I'm looking at advertised stuff and I'm mystery shopping. Mm-hmm. And it is crazy the amount of addendums on a vehicle right now that are not advertised on the website. And I think that's where we're seeing it. I think the FTC got involved because of the OEM. Ford and them come out and go, stop marking up your cars, stop putting stuff on them. And they're like, whoa, this is a big problem. Even their manufacturer sees this issue is occurring. And so you look at that and think, how can you even show? You can't show every rebate on a vehicle because it doesn't apply to every consumer. So short of breaking out every rebate with a full explanation, which doesn't make sense to a consumer on what can be integrated and what can't, and not every OEM is doing that, and not every dealer is doing that, we can't give all of the information some of the time.
All I can say is if consumers want choice and they still want to have choice in the future, they shouldn't want any of this either.
Well, they're trying to say, let me go back to Cliff for a second. Cliff, they're trying to say some of these products and some of these services have no value. You mentioned to me earlier, we were talking about the Coons organization got zapped by the Maryland State Attorney General. What was that case over?
I think it was I don't know I don't remember what the specifics were. It was a little while ago. I mean, it was this year, but I'd have to go back and reread some of that. But listen.
That's a very reputable company.
Yes. Yeah. Look, again, we are in a people business. I mean, it is an employee-driven business, and we have millions, hundreds of millions of customer touch points. The 18,200 dealerships, franchise car dealerships, have 400, over 400 million different financial transactions combined each year. That's an incredible amount. And you think about the touch points, and you think about the decisions every day that a manager has to make. You got to know what every single salesperson is saying. You got to check every single line on your advertising that goes out. It's an incredibly complicated business to run. And sometimes good dealers get sideways. Sometimes managers drop the ball. Sometimes they're rogue managers that are making bad calls. And, you as a dealer principal, I think it's hard to govern that every single minute of every single day that you're in operation. And it's easy to take one thing and blow it out of proportion. So I think that's sort of what happened with the Coons Group. And even with Napleton, it's a big organization, and, I don't know everything that was going on there, but, I think it's hard to play within all of the regulations that are placed upon the dealership today.
Let me ask this.
Napleton was
how much of it is on the process? How much are they talking about the actual process of what we say to the customer when we sell the car? How much of that is being addressed in the new FTC rulings?
We're still at it's still a broad spectrum because it's not passed, it's just introduced.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing, like even with Napleton, was illegal junk fees and discriminatory lending, if I remember correctly, higher financing fees.
And it's discriminatory pricing, yeah.
Discriminatory pricing. Which who knows if that was intentional or not, but we work inside of the business, so we know that it's just, if they'll pay it, they pay it, and if they don't, they don't. Right. And that happens often. But I mean, as an overall for that, look, everybody who's listening, and even ourselves, we had this discussion last week, and I can't prompt you enough to say, if you don't like what you're seeing happen in the career path that's about to change for you and how our industry works, you need to get in touch with the dealer association in your state so they can work with NADA, so that we can work with legislators to make sure that what is being passed and what is not is fair, not only for the consumer, but for the dealership. Because if you don't, you're just sitting by having a conversation about it.
And we can't disregard the consumer. We can't. Now, there are three parts. There are three parts to deceptive trade practice: prejudicial, discriminatory, and predatory. Those are the three descriptors of a deceptive trade practice. Discriminatory. Let's say I've got a person with bad credit, so I sell them a higher price than somebody with good credit on the first pencil. On the first pencil, Jim Ziegler's got an 832 credit score. I'm not going to hit him like I'm going to hit the guy with the 500 credit score. So that's discriminatory. Now, prejudicial, we all know that prejudicial is race, creed, religion, national origin. We go all the categories. We know what prejudicial is. Predatory is charging way more for something than you charge other customers. That's the one that they get people on, predatory. We have a customer that's stupid. If you're stupid and it hits you at a high price that they don't charge to other people, that is predatory. And taking advantage of people's ignorance, and I'm going to be polite with stupid was a joke, but let's say that ignorant, people that are ignorant. And
that makes sense. Ignorant is defined as a lack of education, so that's the correct word choice for it.
Okay, dumbass. Okay. Anyway, April, comment on that.
Well, I think, the first two are really, really easy. And right now is not even, I think, what the FTC is talking about. I think that all the hubbub right now that's out there of people feeling like they're overpaying for things and that sort of thing.
Predatory.
Yeah, let's get in there, and they're talking about the predatory. And the reality of it is, I don't think that's the case. I really feel like everyone is overpaying for everything. It's just what it is. It's a massive supply and demand problem. Housing market has gone up. Everything has gone up. So I don't think that it is predatory. I think they're trying to control something that doesn't need to be controlled, that will solve itself in a very short period of time. And the rest of it falls into the state guidelines that have already been set forth. So the predatory part of it, I just feel like people can go to another store. And nowadays, if you really feel like somebody's gouging you, there's other options. I mean, you can go online. We talk about selling online. People are shipping cars all over the world.
Well, they're aiming at the F&I department. The F&I department is squarely in the sights. I mean,
well, they are, but I think squarely in the sights for the wrong reasons. I think they're squarely in the sights because it's the next space for them to kind of go after and try to control, because they're not going after the stuff that's already regulated. They're not talking about, Reg Z. They're not talking about any of that stuff. They're talking about trying to control what we can sell and how much we can sell it for. And quite frankly, most of that is already controlled by the banks. The banks won't allow you to sell a warranty for $9,000 to
if you're not using a menu
She's selling it on a
presentation in
payment
your
plan
dealership,
outside of the contract.
if you're not using a menu presentation, and I've been teaching menu presentation for years. If you're not giving the customer options, choices, opt in, opt out, same price for everybody, same price for everybody. I mean, so predatory is when you charge one customer way up here for a service contract and you charge another customer way down here. Now, service contracts are negotiable. Let's be clear about that. In most states, except the ones that are insurance regulated, a service contract is negotiable, but what you need to have is the same starting price for every customer.
And you need proof of it, people,
Yes,
which is why you use a menu.
And it's your company policy, because a service contract, every car has a different price on the service, a cost on the service contract. So I suggest you either mark it up a set amount. Well, we're going to mark everyone $500 over cost, fair profit. I'm not price fixing here, 600, 700, 200. I don't care what you mark it up. But whoever you mark it up over price, every customer gets that same markup on the first pass.
And you can change that by model too, guys. A Ram can have $1,000 markup to start. If you're a dealership or a person in a dealership right now that isn't doing these two things, you're stupid. One, using a menu, not just for the gross profit, but to prove it. And two, keeping a history of how you desk a deal. In almost every CRM, at least the good ones, if you desk inside of your CRM, VIN included, you can see the history of a pencil from where you start to where you go. Because if you believe that you will not be an example or a precedent for what is trying to be occurred here, you are crazy. And before somebody says, oh, we're just a small town dealership. Yeah, you're the target too. Not just a $10 million lawsuit. For the FTC to have things like this moved and for them to look at stuff and for you to not have these kind of, lack of things in your dealership, these kind of lawsuits in your dealership, you have to follow strategy and rules. They're there in place for a reason. And if you are the finance manager or the desk manager in a dealership that gets sued for one of these things, you can bet your ass that the whole industry will know your name and it's going to get real hard to find a job, whether you participated in it or not. But remember, as the finance manager, you're the last signature on the contract.
Did you hear that, Don Poteet?
The other thing I would say too, though, just to kind of throw it in there, because I can't stress this enough. When I say go to your dealers association, do not allow yourself to make the excuse that you have to be the owner of a dealership to have those conversations, because if you are not actively participating in these conversations, you are a part of the problem, period. And then you don't get to complain about it later. I mean, you can, but you'll look like a jackwagon. So.
I think a lot of people think that none of this is actually going to hit the finish line, and they're just assuming that like the NADAs and stuff are going to get it there. But I think that's the biggest misconception out there is when you sit back and you think things won't happen, that's when they happen. And so the most important thing is, like Bobbie said, is truly getting involved and not sitting here saying, hey, this stuff that's being put out there is just, false and it's not going to happen. They're going this direction for a reason. They're not going to stop.
You have hit it.
You need to be careful who you vote for. That's the thing too, right? I will not get into a political conversation. That is not the goal of this, but I will tell you this. You need to start looking at some single issue voters things. And if you're not sure who's doing what as it pertains to your career and your choices, start to have those conversations, because it matters. Yep. It matters if this is changed. It matters for our industry to be able to be progressive, but the FTC wouldn't be getting involved if we didn't act like jackwagons some of the time, and if people weren't out there just being dumb.
Okay. I think I will
say this. I will say this. I think, Jim, you've said this in the past. At this period in time, we are at a juncture in history regarding the dealership model that is probably the most, I don't want to overstate it, but probably the most dangerous and at its most threatened that we've had since.
How easily
Ever.
we forget 2009, right? How easily.
Yeah,
we
I mean, even 2009 wasn't. It really wasn't a dealership.
That was the manufacturer's Armageddon.
That was two manufacturers that were controlled by a private equity firm, a venture capital firm that were told you have to cut dealerships and you have to get to this number.
And you had to break dealership franchise agreements though to do it, and they did in some cases, and they almost did in many. That simple thing caused so much chaos, and now look what we're just sitting by and watching.
But I think now this is industry wide. It's not just two brands that we're dealing with, and the next 3 to 5 years are going to be critical. So when April was talking about state associations, Bobbie's talking about state associations, absolutely get in and support and start doing it now, because that is listen, in 2000, late 90s, early 2000s, we had the dawn of the internet age and a lot of players coming into the market saying they were going to upend the dealer body, get rid of dealers. And a lot of the state associations went back to their laws and went back to the drawing board and helped and created laws, helped their legislatures craft legislation that was beneficial to dealers and that have protected dealers over the last 2 decades. Well, it's time to get back at it again, because we're at a critical juncture. And I'm not one that likes to overstate or is a doom and gloom kind of guy, but I'll tell you, this next 3 to 5 years is going to be.
We are at the Battle of Armageddon. Folks.
It is. It really is.
The dealer apocalypse. It is the dealer apocalypse.
Well, it touches all of us.
I will tell you. April said one thing a minute ago. She said, a lot of people sit out there, well, we've been doing it this way for years and we've been getting away with it. Look, hey, how many times would the federal government or a state agency have to walk in and arrest your ass? And, you've been getting away with it for years, but one time would ruin your life. Do you really want to be the lifetime bride of Big Bubba?
Nobody does. Anthony Bartoli, yes, there is a drinking
game. You want to be the
game.
bride of Big Bubba? Come on. Quit it. I mean, Cliff Banks and I have been crusaders for 30 years. We have brought down some of the biggest dragons. We have organized things that got me in trouble anyway.
So I need to rate. I just been smarter with you, Jim. I've been a little craftier.
I'm in trouble all the time.
I mean, I have already tangled with the Federal Trade Commission, unbeknownst to I don't want to be the bride of Big Bubba, no.
I fight for the dealer. I'm in trouble all the time with the OEM, the vendors, everybody, and that's okay with me.
That's exactly right. So what we're saying right now is get on your state association.
Yes.
Get rid of bad players. This is me. People say, Ziegler, you fire people. Yeah, I fire people, and I give them a bad. Not only is your ass out of here, but I'm gonna give you a bad reference. I'll sue you. Good, sue me. No problem. Get rid of bad players and give them a bad reference. Get the bad players out of the industry. I have fired some really hardcore bad players and then persecuted them. If I even heard they were getting a job, I made a phone call. Don't screw with the dog. But anyway, April, what are you smiling about, April?
Oh, that's just funny. Don't mess with the bull. You get the horns. Don't mess with the dog. He'll bite your face off and make I love it. Just keep in mind, these things are really, really, really important, because if the FTC starts saying, hey, we can just come in there and fine you for what we think is important, there's a lot of control that comes behind that. And it's just stuff that we need to get ahead of. But to Bobbie's point, to Jim's point, Cliff's point, a lot of the core of what this is just, if you're doing good, you're probably going to be okay. Like if you're doing all the right things, if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing now, reach out to somebody, call a friend, go online and read your state's current legislation.
April, one of the things we're worried about is they're going to prosecute some people who are doing the right thing.
Well, and that's my fear. That's why
that's the fear. And that's why you need your.
It really is, because
I've been calling for the NADA to step up, and we got rogue vendors, we got rogue manufacturers, and bring these rogue vendors and these rogue manufacturers in line. You know,
you rogue dealers who are out there jacking shit up for all of us, knock it off. Like, come on.
Well, and I think there's only a few. I mean, I can't help it. I'm going to try not to get political. Like Bobbie said, we're not trying to go there. But I think at the end of the day, it kind of feels like, you know, they're trying to herd up the cattle, so to speak, to kind of line out why the OEM should get things the way they want things. And I can't help but feel like that's where some of this is really being fueled from. So I just, again, it comes back down to the point of, you know, make sure your shit's cleaned up. And also make sure
some jackwagon will come along and mess it up.
Process and communication are key, people. Process and communication. I don't understand why it has to be stressed so often and it's so hard to comprehend.
Bingo. So I think just at the end of the day, make sure you know what you're doing, but it is time to get involved. There's too many red flags going up all over the place to think we can now just sit back and think that there's not something under the surface being
right. Well, I hope that's everything goes to build to order.
And one thing you really need to do is you need to subscribe to the bank's report.
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh yeah. If you're not subscribing,
we'll be launching a new website.
I don't know why I haven't gotten a complimentary subscription.
I don't know.
You know, I'm kind of thinking the same thing, just as like a friend for years. You know, insider
edition. Pick up the phone and call me. You get the total unvarnished version.
But anyway, how do they get in touch with you, Cliff Banks?
Just cbanks at thebanksreport.com or LinkedIn, Twitter.
Banks at thebanksreport.com. Is that it?
There's like a chicken pack there going on.
Yeah.
Is that it right there on the screen right now?
I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter.
Okay, and you can subscribe to the Banks Report. The Banks Report is all the secret stuff. I mean, this guy is so.
There's got pictures of everybody with donkeys or something.
He's got pictures of manufacturer executives with farm animals. I mean, it's unbelievable. This guy has got the inside on everything. I mean, if you want to really find out what's going on in the automotive world, the secret stuff, the news ahead of the news, subscribe to the Banks Report. Email to cbanks at thebanksreport.com. So we got it up there right online.
Yeah, I'm pretty accessible. What's that?
It's so nice to see your face today. I feel like it's
been
forever.
Right back.
You're looking good. I mean, Cliff and I go back 25 years.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
At least 25 years, yeah. We've been fighting the good fight. We have stood down the rogues and the scoundrels, and the whole thing that Bobbie was trying to say that April was alluding to. You don't need to lie, cheat, sneak, deceive, or misrepresent to sell cars.
No.
I have made a career with record-breaking numbers, and nobody will ever say that I was disreputable. Never. I mean, because you didn't have to do that. I mean, everything I did, everything I am doing has been right in the guidelines of what is acceptable. You're doing F&I and you're not using a menu. What's wrong with you?
You're not a sales professional if you can't do this. Look, I sell air. I get paid to boss people around. Mm-hmm. Let that sink in for a minute. And
you're good at it.
And neither does anybody else. I'm good at it. I got leadership skills. It's the whole thing. My mom says so.
Now, if you've got a BDC, a business development center, if you're in the business, if you got internet problems, you need to call Bobbie Herron. And Bobbie, I have a hot lead for you. I've been trying to get in touch with you the last couple of days.
I was off the grid for the weekend because I refused to celebrate.
Well, you need to get on the grid because I got a lead that needs you in the store right now.
All right, I'm in.
One of my clients from 30 years ago. I've already told him your name. He's expecting your call, so I'll give that when we get off.
I am on.
Anyway, if you need anything to do with the internet, and if you are a top flight manager, a top flight salesperson, a top flight technician, if you're a great technician, call April Simmons at the Horn Automotive Group.
Heck
yeah.
Do you need top quality? You're hiring?
We're hiring.
Okay, well, how do they get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is the easiest, but you can always email me at april@horncars.com.
April,
Thank you, Alicia.
HORNE.
Yep,
Horn.
cars.com.
For the first time ever, we're 1 minute over, ladies and gentlemen.
What?
That's never happened.
That's never
Is that
happened.
it?
You got it, friend.
Okay, if you're a top flight technician, you want top pay, great work environment, good hours. They serve steak dinners every Friday. No problem. Cliff Banks, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll reach a lot of people in this replay. I think this was a great show. Everybody stick around. I'm about to go off. Wave goodbye to the audience.